This is all about the risk assessment cycle. A complete guide to the risk assessment process. Mark Zuckerberg, founder of Facebook, once said, "The biggest risk is not taking any risk. In a world that's changing really quickly, the only strategy that is guaranteed to fail is not taking risks." While you probably heard similar advice from prominent figures throughout the years, we think you'll agree that there are some risks your company doesn't want to take. Risks that put the health and well-being of your employees in danger. With a risk assessment process, companies can identify and prepare for potential risks in order to avoid catastrophic consequences down the road and keep their personnel safe. The risk assessment steps. Step 1. Identify the hazards. Step 2. Decide who might be harmed and how. Step 3. Evaluate the risks and decide on the precautions. Step 4. Record your findings and implement them. Step 5. Review your assessment and update if necessary. So what is risk assessment? With the risk assessment process, users take a look at their organizations too, to identify processes and situations that may cause harm, particularly to people. Determine how likely it is that each hazard will occur and how severe the consequences will be. Decide what steps the organization can take to stop these hazards from occurring or to control the risk. It's important to note the difference between hazards and risks. A hazard is anything that can cause harm, including work accidents, emergency situations, toxic chemicals, employee conflicts, stress, and more. A risk, on the other hand, it is the chance that a hazard will cause harm. As part of your risk assessment plan, you will identify hazards but then calculate the risk or likelihood of the hazards occurring. The goal of a risk assessment plan will vary across industries, but overall, the goal is to help organizations prepare for and combat risk. Other goals include providing an analysis of possible threats, preventing injuries or illness, meeting legal requirements, creating awareness about hazards and risks, creating an accurate inventory of available assets, justifying the cost of managing risks, determining the budget to remediate risks, understanding the return on investment. Businesses should perform risk assessment before introducing new processes or activities, before introducing changes to existing processes or activities such as changing machinery, or when the company identifies a new hazard. The steps used in risk assessment form an integral part of our organization's health and safety management plan and ensure that your organization is prepared to handle any risk. So, here are the 5 steps in the risk assessment process. Before you start the risk management process, you should determine the scope of the assessment, necessary resources, stakeholders involved, and laws and regulations that you'll need to follow. Then proceed with these 5 steps. Number 1. Identify the hazards. The first step to creating your risk assessment plan is determining what hazards your employees and your business face, including natural disasters like flooding, tornadoes, hurricanes, earthquakes, fire. Biological hazards like pandemic disease, foodborne illnesses, etc. Workplace accidents like slips and trips, transportation and accidents, structural failure, and mechanical breakdowns. Intentional acts like labor strikes, demonstrations, bomb threats, robbery, and arson. Next is technological hazards like lost internet connection, power outage, chemical hazards, asbestos, and cleaning fluids. Mental hazards, excess workload, and bullying. Interruptions in the supply chain. Take a look around your workplace and see what processes or activities could potentially harm your organization. Include all aspects of work, including remote workers and non-routine activities such as repair and maintenance. You should also look to accident-like incident reports to determine what hazards have impacted your company in the past. Number 2, determine who might be harmed and how. As you look around your organization, think about how your employees could be harmed by business activities or external factors. For every hazard that you identify in step 1, think about who will be harmed should be the hazard take place. Number 3, evaluate the risks and take precautions. Now that you have gathered a list of potential hazards, you need to consider how likely it is that the hazard will occur and how severe the consequences will be if that hazard occurs. This evaluation will help you determine where you should reduce the level of risk and which hazards you should prioritize first. Skip ahead and learn how you can create a risk assessment chart to help you in this process. Number 4, record your findings. If you have more than 5 employees in your office, you are required by law to write down your risk assessment process. Your plan should include the hazards you found, the people they affect, and how you plan to mitigate them. The record or the risk assessment plan should show that you conducted a proper check of your workplace. Determine who will be affected, controlled and dealt with obvious hazards, initiated precautions to keep risk low, kept your staff involved in the process. Number 5, review assessment and update if necessary. Your workplace is always changing, so the risks to your organization will change. As new equipment, processes, and people are introduced, each brings the risk of a new hazard. Continually review and update your risk assessment process to stay on top of these new hazards. So now, how to create a risk assessment chart. Even though you need to be aware of the risks facing your organizations, you should try to fix all of them at once. Risk mitigation can get expensive and can stretch your resources. Instead, you should prioritize risk to focus your time and effort on preventing the most important hazards. The risk assessment chart is based on the principle that a risk has 2 primary dimensions, so probability and impact, each represented on one axis of the chart. Be prepared for anything. By applying the risk assessment steps mentioned above, you can manage any potential risk to your business. Get prepared with your risk assessment plan. Take the time to look for the hazards facing your business and figure out how to manage them.